722.971 valve body, 230-277-0601. Starting already. Okay, this valve body is not the one that's going in the car. Actually, I had already done this video, and something happened to the video, got corrupted or disappeared or something. Anyway, I only had like half of it. So, luckily I still have the valve body from the core, so we can go through this and get what I was missing. I guess it'd help if I put the right valve in the right spot. So this valve stem out goes there, spring, valve with stem out, spring. The adjustment, I've been measuring from here to there. Make sure these little wings get in those cutouts there. Same way with this one, stem out, spring, measuring the same distance, and wings in the cutouts, spring, stem in, retaining plate, .20 torques on these bolts here. And these are self-tapping bolts, so make sure that you get them started in the way that they were. You do not want to cut new threads. Alright, manual valve has a magnet on it. Make sure it's nice and clean. Like I said, this isn't going in a vehicle, so I don't care how clean it is. You got check valves. This side's going to go down. This side's going to face up. And we got one here. One here. And one down here. Upper valve body is 230-277-0701, and then the other numbers over here, 230-270-8200, 19.02.14, DD-AD-DD-DDD. out. They have this valve hollow end out. Spring. Spring. Stem in. Spring. Stem in. Stem out. And spring. Our retaining plate. Okay, we have the spring, stem in, spring, stem in, retaining plate, and our bolts for this one. I'll go ahead and get this tightened down and get the next side out, and we'll be back. Alright, spring, stem in on the valve, nothing in that bore. Retaining plate, and our bolts. Nothing in that bore. Stem out. Spring. Spring. Stem in. This valve here does not appear to matter which direction it goes. Spring. This is a barrel shaped spring. So it's smaller on the ends than it is in the center. And so those two measurements will reflect. Retaining plate and her bolts. Alright, valve. These seem to be very worn out. Hollow end out spring. And this valve does not matter which direction it goes. There is an O-ring on this solenoid. I have found out since I did the other valve body that this is a wet clutch start solenoid. It just does not have a torque converter like you are used to. If this has got that converter that's like about that big around, 6 inch, about 6-8 inches around, that is not a torque converter. That is a wet start clutch. And I cannot find any literature on this thing anywhere, so I'm not sure how exactly it works, but that is what I have been told that this solenoid does. I have not been able to confirm that. Okay, we have 6 check valves. One of them is large. It's this one. That side goes down. 5 of them like this. The black side goes down. One goes there. One goes there. There. And there. And there. We got 2 rubber check balls. One goes here. One goes there. And we have 14 steel check balls. Alright, they go there. We have our separator plate. Here's our ID marks. Okay, we have 4 30 Torx bolts on this side. Leave it loose so that you can get everything lined up. We have our pin, goes in here. It will push in, so don't just push it all the way in. Just leave it up enough that you can get it started into here, and then push it down to where it's flush there. And then there's a 30 Torx bolt that holds that in. Okay, on your plate here, you have this little tab right here. Has to hook up underneath the plate right there. And we have Torx bolt. It looks like that. It goes back here. And then we got ones that look like this that go here, there, and there. Change your O-rings on your solenoids, even if you think that they're good. They are a bad part on these that fail quite often, and will give you all kinds of shifting issues. So you got black or blue, black, black, blue here, and there's a 40 Torx that holds those on. Got a looper wiring into, let's see if you can see that, loops into here and comes around there and then plugs in right there. And then on the back here we have blue, black, and blue, black. Alright, and that's it for this valve body. Do make sure that your manual valve, which this is upside down, I'd have to flip this over. So I gotta take this lower or upper valve body back off and flip this manual valve around, because this needs to line up inside of right there. I don't think I can get this to turn around. Maybe can get this to pop off and get it to do it. See if we can get this back up in there. Let's see what we got here. Why ain't you wanting to go? Why are you being like that? It will go in there. I just want to be a snot. Make sure I don't have a groove this has to be into. Looks the same all the way around, so there we go. Alright, that goes in there just like so. So make sure that that's that way. Alright, that's it for this valve buddy. Okay, on this start-stop motor, there's a bearing that presses into here, and this fan is going to sit this way on top, and this housing is going to face this way, and there's a T10 Torx that holds that onto there. Once I get that on there, I'm going to use this to press it into the depth that it's supposed to be. Because one thing I forgot to do, well actually I couldn't do it, is measure. It looks like it was sitting right there. So that's where I'm going to try to get it back in. And we'll be back once I get that done. One thing I did forget to mention was putting this brush assembly down inside there, and this bolts to that. Okay, the seal was just pressed in there. It goes in this way. Just like so. Okay, on the brushes, I just slide in there. And I have these two tensioners that are shaped just like that. Goes in, this side down, and then this comes around and hooks in to that slot right there, and it pushes in. Alright, just like that. Okay, put this in the housing and crimp those two spots, this side and the other side, crimp that in. Crimp it in just like so. Plug in your board. If I was rebuilding this for real, I would put fresh tape on here to hold this down once it was in place. Seeing as this is not being rebuilt, not being put in a car, I don't really care. Oh, there's two O-rings on there. I guess I didn't say that. And there's a gasket that goes on here. O-ring that goes on there. Housing goes on here. There is a long 25 Torx. It goes here. And then the short ones go in the other spots. Okay, I couldn't find no information on this anywhere, so I'm not going to have the torque specs for it. You just need to stick it into a bolt torque calculator program and it'll spit it out probably somewhere, I would say 97 inch-pounds, maybe 104. Okay, on the back side here, if this thing will stay standing up. We have two 20 torques, I believe they were. Yes. Dot down on that outer gear, dot up on the inner gear, and gasket. Plate. .25 torques on this. Okay, and then there's two seals that go between this and the bell housing. Okay, there's an O-ring that goes here. D-shaped ring here. Hopefully you marked your drum before you took it apart. It makes it so much easier if you do. D-shaped ring here. D-shaped ring here. And D-shaped ring here. Now I'll mark mine on here to line up with that right there. Okay, the bevel plate goes with the fingers up, just like that. Return or retainer goes this way, and the snap ring with the short end of the taper up. Okay, if you didn't mark your piston, that's about how it lines up right there. And start with the cushion plate, dish down. Start with the outside tooth steel clutch, and then the rest of the steels are inside teeth. Pressure plate and the snap ring. Okay, it's highly recommended that you replace the pistons on these things. These aren't getting replaced because it's not getting rebuilt. It's just going back as a core. Lube up the piston. Put your bevel spring in with the dish down. Put the snap ring in with the slip down. And we're going to keep as much of the opening away from the opening as we can. Okay, that turned out pretty good. Openings being supported totally. Alright, cushion plate with the dish down. And you're going to alternate single-sided clutches up. There can be different setups as far as what vehicle it's in, so pay attention to what was in there and go back with what was in there. If you used a good quality clutch, it should come out pretty much perfect. And let's see if we can put this opening away from the opening again. Yeah, right there. Should be good. Alright, lube it up again. Another molded piston here. The return spring has this cage that goes on it. Right, this side goes down. You have an O-ring here. Alright, you got your cushion plate. Dish down again. Single-sided clutches here. Start with the outside tooth. Alternate inside tooth all the way up. Here again, keep track of what was in there. step side up on your pressure plate, and snap ring and bearing with the lip down. Right on here, it's kind of a D-shaped lip seal. Want your fingers down on your bevel plate. You want the lip down again on your snap ring, and try to keep the opening away from as much of an opening as you can. And you can push this in like we did the other one. This one's pretty easy to get the feet in here and push down with the foot press, so that's what I'm going to do. Alright, there we go. Alright, dish down again on our cushion plate. Single-sided frictions again. Step up on the pressure plate again, and our snap ring. We got cage bearing that goes on here, 2 O-rings that go on here. Bearing. Race. And snap ring. If you'll look at your snap ring, there will be a taper to the tips. You want the shortest end of the taper up towards you. Just like so. As I'm putting them on there, alright, the sealing ring right here got ruined with all the time it's been sitting around here. So there's 5 sealing rings that go on here. And when you get the new ones, they're going to pooch out just a little bit. So leave these 2 down here off. And just open these up just enough to get it on. Because you can break the back of these rings, never know it, and they will not seal properly. So you're going to have one there, and then you're going to have a cage bearing. Goes on here. You have this race. Goes on there. Make sure your bearing's inside there. Snap ring if you need to change out your ring gear. Usually if any of this is bad, like this ring gear was bad, it's usually going to destroy all this too. So put your planet on, put your gear on, put this on this way, bearing and race. short end of the taper up again. And then put your sealing rings on. And use a blind spline puller to get your bearing out. There's a Teflon seal that goes underneath there. And your bearing goes in. You're going to want the bearing to be down far enough that it's past those holes right there. You don't want to be blocking those holes. So like so. You have a D-shaped lip seal in here. Goes right there. Okay, we have a cage bearing here again. It's just a split bearing. Sealing rings here, here, and here, and here. You have an O-ring here. Bevel plate with the fingers up. You have an O-ring on here. Piston goes with this side down. Yep, gotta find my snapper. Alright, bearing with the lip in. Cushion plate with the dish down. This way. Single-sided frictions again, starting with an outside tooth. Pressure plate and snap ring. Alright, the bearing just presses in flush against this ridge that's in there. You have an O-ring out here. The front seal goes just below flush. The inner gear has a bevel to it, and the serrations go down. The inner gear does not matter which direction it goes, but pay attention to how it came out. I always mark mine, put them back the way it came out. Go ahead and put your lineup bolt in. If your pump pocket in your bell has too much wear, I do make a wear plate that you can put in there. There's too much wear in here. So lube up your pump and lube up your bell. Line up your holes. Put your plates on. Line up your holes on your stator. Here's a sealing ring here. 45 Torx bolts. Alright, 20 foot-pounds on this. Alright, we have sealing rings again here and here and here, and they do go together same way those others do, just like so. Alright, piston in. Those two bearings are not going to come off of there unless you force them to, and you probably break them trying to get them off. The bevel plate goes with the dish down again. Snap ring goes with the ledge down again. And put the opening the same way as the others. Try to support it as much as possible. Alright, do make sure it's all the way up in there. Cushion plate with the dish down again. Alternate single-sided clutches. Now some of these may have double-sided clutches, so I don't think that all of them have single-sided. Snap ring again. Alright, put your drum in. Come on, last clutch drop. This is down, doesn't feel down. I want this drum feed hole to line up with that hole right there. Ring gear. This bearing, lip down.
You want me to drive it, or are you going to drive it?
I'll drive it. Into this ring gear. Okay, put your drum in. This really needs to be a hole in the table because the drum needs to sit down a lot further. Put your ring gear in, and then put your snap ring on. Looks like it's going to sit down far enough, so maybe I won't have to put it in a hole in the table this time. Flip the whole thing over. And I put a pair of vice grips on the input shaft just above the stator to hold it all together as I set it down into the transmission. I find that to be the easiest for me to get this in. Okay, if you need to change your case, you're going to need to measure your old case from the back to the front and measure your new case. That way you can compensate for your shim in the back. You're going to need those two measurements, and then we'll get to the other measurement when we get back there. Okay, put your drum in, your feed port's at the 6 o'clock position. I almost forgot. Put your park gear down inside. And put your drum in. Feed port's at the 6 o'clock position. You want to check and make sure that your bolts are lined up. Before you go any further, that way, if they're not, you don't have to take it all the way back apart. Put your clutches in. Cushion plate first, dish down. Alternate your steels and clutches up. Pressure plate. Snap ring opening at about the 12 o'clock position. your planet assembly. And the camera's kind of right in my way. Yeah, it sounded like it went down. Okay, make sure the bearing's on the back of your K2 drum, and then drop your whole pump assembly in. Here, 45 torques on the outside. These are aluminum bolts. They are supposed to be replaced every time you tighten them down. They are torque to yield. So if you get radical with them, they are going to break and they are going to strip out. You got two coming in from the back at the top. And 30 torques on the middle. Alright, 177 inch-pounds on the bolts here, 20 foot-pounds on those. Okay, there's two O-rings and a rubber seal that go on here. It goes right there. Put your valve body on. Make sure it's your linkage lines up with the linkage down here. valve body bolts, 30 Torx, 177 inch-pounds again. Filter, there is an O-ring on the filter, so make sure your new one has one on it. Alright, pan and pan gasket. Here's a fluid level tube that goes right there. There's several different pans, so make sure everything is matched up. On the Patreon side will be all that information. I'm taking this off and keeping this tube. E10's on the pan. This one here goes up over here. The rest of them look like that. This side right here goes into the pan. Same thing on the pan bolts. 16 foot-pounds on the drain plug. And looks like it's a 6mm. Maybe not. 40 Torx. And there is a washer on that. Alright, let me get my depth gauge and we'll be back to measure the back. Okay, I don't have a depth gauge that's deep enough for this, so I'll just have to use my calipers. But you're going to put your guide sleeve in, leaving your shim out, and put you a flat bar across. Make sure that this surface is clean so it comes out properly. And then you're going to measure from the top of your bar to the top of that guide sleeve. And you record that measurement, and you're going to subtract it from those other two. And that's going to tell you what shim that you need to put in, and then the shim goes on top of there. Okay, first thing you're going to want to do is have the shim and your spacer off that go here. I'm going to take your spacer, going to place it on top of your gear, sitting this way. You can measure down inside. It's going to be kind of hard to do one-handed. You can use calipers, or you can use depth gauge. And you're going to measure from the top of your spacer to the base. You're going to take that measurement. That's going to be measurement A. Then you're going to take a measurement from here, base of here, to the top of the gear right there. That's going to be one of the B measurements. Then you want to stay off of this bevel right here. Probably going to need a bar to go across there. You take your gear, place it on there, and then use your depth gauge. This is not going to be right because I'm going to be at an angle, so you probably want to put a bar across here. Take the measurement from the top of that gear, or top of that shaft, to the top of the gear. And then if you use a bar across here, you're going to want to subtract that. That's going to be your second B measurement. You're going to add those two together. Add 0.3 millimeters. It's about 12 thousandths. Add that to your measurement. And then subtract that from the first measurement. And that's going to be your shim size. Once you get your correct shim, you can put your spacer on. You can put your shim on. And you're going to go and stack this up the way it's supposed to be. And I forgot to mention that you're going to want your transmission up on blocks like so, so that your input shaft is not pushing up, because if you don't have blocks on there, it will be pushing up. This seal goes with the spring facing inwards. You're going to want to lube that up really well. Lube that up. And then your gear is going to go in. You might want to put a thin bead of, I use the blue grease because it melts quickly. Something is going to melt quickly, but anyway, put it around there. It'll help keep that spring from popping off. It's very easy to roll that spring when you're trying to put that in. In fact, I can feel that this one's already done it. I don't really care so much because it's going back as a core, but there we go. You wouldn't want to lube these bearings up when you're rebuilding it. I'm not rebuilding it, so I don't care. There's a snap ring back here to get this bearing out if you need to get the bearing out. There's a snap ring down in here to get the pivot pin out, to get your part pawl out if you need to get that out. And this, oh, no, it's over here. There's a snap ring to get your guide out for your park also. Let's see, I don't think that's going to go in. Let's put this one in first. Put you a thin bead of silicone on. Yeah, 2 long 45 Torx. The rest are short like this one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those. Fill plug over here, drain plug here. This does fill up by the cooler line, but it will take a while, so I recommend that you fill this up. Planetary does have 2 bearings on it. You can see the clutches are burnt up on this one, and this goes on here. This bolt is stripped out also. When this flange broke, it did a number on it. Come on now, drop down on there. There we go. The E10 on this also, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that to go back in there. And the ring gear in this shaft would normally be made onto it, and would be sitting up there like that. Put you another thin bead of silicone on. There is a bearing in here. Take your rear seal out. There's a snap ring in there. .30 Torx on these. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of those. You got your flange, 34mm 12-point nut, 147 foot-pounds on that. Okay. There's your auxiliary pump, your 2 seals that are in there. There are 30 Torx on these, 177 inch-pounds. Long one goes there, short ones go there. They call this the intelligent servo module. Put this on your linkage, and there's 4 30 Torx bolts that hold that on also. 177 inch-pounds. And then we are done. You gotta make sure that's back in park. Anyhow, you see how it goes on. You can't see me putting it on anyway, so that's it for this unit.